There is a world hidden just beneath our own, a place of whispers and secrets, of new names and forgotten pasts. It exists in the quiet suburbs, on sun-drenched cul-de-sacs, and in bustling city centers where no one knows their neighbor's real story. This is the world created by the United States Federal Witness Protection Program, or Witsec as it's known. It's a place designed to make people disappear, to erase them completely from the lives they once knew. And why? To keep them safe from the very people they helped put behind bars. It sounds like something straight out of a Hollywood script, doesn't it? But this is no movie, this is real life. With real consequences. The idea is simple yet profound. Take a person who holds the key to unlocking a criminal empire, a person whose life is now in mortal danger, and give them a new one. A clean slate. A chance to start over, far from the reach of those who would silence them forever. They are picked up in the dead of night, spirited away by U.S. Marshals, leaving behind everything and everyone they have ever known. Family, friends, homes, even their own names, all sacrificed in the name of justice. Or at least that's the theory. A necessary tool, the government says, to dismantle the most dangerous criminal organizations from the inside out. But what if the person being protected is just as dangerous as the one they're testifying against? What if the key to locking up one monster is held by another? This is where the story takes a dark turn. The program wasn't just built for the innocent bystander who saw something they shouldn't have. No, its most powerful clients are often cut from the very same cloth as the criminals they condemn. They are insiders. They are mobsters, drug kingpins, and cold-blooded killers. Men who have built their lives on a foundation of violence and fear, now asking for protection from the very system they once defied. And so, the shadows deepen. The line between hero and villain begins to blur, until it's almost impossible to see. We are left with a troubling question, one that echoes through the quiet new lives of these protected witnesses. When you make a deal with the devil to catch a demon, who really wins? The public? The scales of justice? Or is it the devil himself, now given a government-sanctioned second chance? A chance to walk among us, his past a secret kept by the very people sworn to protect us. It's a paradox, a chilling one that sits at the very heart of this hidden world. It was a deal born of desperation, a necessary evil, some would call it. The government needed a way to break the code of silence, the infamous of the Mafia and other tight-knit criminal syndicates. These organizations were like fortresses, impenetrable from the outside. The only way in was to convince someone on the inside to open the door, to talk. But talking was a death sentence. Anyone who dared to testify against their former associates would be hunted down, their life forfeit. So the government needed to offer something more valuable than silence. They needed to offer a future. And so the Witness Protection Program was officially born in 1970, a formal structure for a practice that had existed in less official ways before. The proposition was audacious. Testify against your dangerous former partners, give us the evidence we need to convict them, and we will give you a new life. We will make you a ghost. Your old identity will cease to exist. You will receive a new name, a new social security number, a new place to live, far from the vengeful eyes of the people you betrayed. It was a powerful incentive, a lifeline for those drowning in a world of crime with no way out. The program's architects argued it was a pragmatic choice, a strategic tool in the war on organized crime. How else could you bring down a figure like John Gotti, the Teflon Don, who seemed untouchable? You needed an insider, someone who sat at the table with him, who heard the orders, who knew where the bodies were buried, literally. The testimony of one high-ranking mobster could dismantle an entire crime family, taking dozens of dangerous criminals off the streets. From that perspective, protecting one killer to imprison 20 others seemed like a grim but justifiable calculation, a kind of battlefield triage for the justice system, but every deal has a price. And this one was steep. The bargain required law enforcement to hold its nose and embrace men they had spent years, even decades, trying to lock up. It meant looking past their bloody histories, their trail of victims, and seeing them not as perpetrators, but as assets. It was a Faustian pact made in the halls of justice. In exchange for invaluable testimony, the government would wash the blood from the hands of murderers and thieves, give them a fresh start, and ask the American public to trust that it was all for the greater good. A devil's bargain indeed. Who exactly were these people deemed worthy of a second chance? You might imagine a frightened bookkeeper or a reluctant getaway driver, someone caught on the periphery of a criminal world they never truly wanted, and sometimes, that was the case. But more often than not, the witnesses who could deliver the most devastating blows to criminal empires were not on the periphery at all. They were at the very center of the storm. They were the enforcers, the capos, the drug lords. They were, in no uncertain terms, murderers and sociopaths, men with a profound capacity for violence. Think about the kind of person who can rise through the ranks of a brutal organization like the Mafia or a ruthless drug cartel. It requires a certain kind of character, a specific set of skills. It demands loyalty, but also a readiness to betray. It demands a willingness to intimidate, to brutalize, and when necessary, to kill without remorse. These are not qualities found in the average citizen. They are the hallmarks of a predator, and these were precisely the individuals the government sought out, the very people Witsec was designed to protect. The program became a sanctuary not for the sheep, but for the wolves willing to turn on their own pack. The list of crimes committed by those who have entered the program is a chilling catalog of human darkness. They have confessed to contract killings, to drive-by shootings, to torture, to dismemberment. They have run vast drug networks that poisoned entire communities. They have extorted, robbed, and terrorized for profit and for power. And after admitting to these horrific acts, after laying out their sins for federal prosecutors, they were not led to a lifelong prison cell. Instead, they were given a key. A key to a new apartment, a new car, and a new life, all courtesy of the American taxpayer. This created a strange and unsettling reality. The government, in its quest for justice, found itself in the business of protecting killers. It had to ensure that men who had taken lives were kept safe from harm. U.S. Marshals, sworn to uphold the law and protect the innocent, were now assigned as guardians to the guilty. They had to stand between a murderer and the revenge he had earned. The moral landscape became a murky swamp where the lines were not just blurred, but seemingly erased. The company a nation keeps says a lot about it, and in this case, the nation was keeping company with killers. The stories are the stuff of legend. Case files that read like crime novels, filled with characters almost too brutal to be believed. Take Salvatore Gravano, better known as Sammy the Bull. He was the underboss of the Gambino crime family, John Gotti's right-hand man. By his own admission, Sammy the Bull was involved in 19 murders. 19. He described them in cold, clinical detail. And for his testimony, the testimony that finally put the Teflon Don away for life, Gravano served a mere 5 years in prison. He then walked into the sunlight, into the waiting arms of the Witness Protection Program, a free man. Then there was Alpo Martinez, a different kind of monster, from a different world. Martinez was a notorious drug kingpin who reigned over the streets of Harlem in the 1980s. His name was synonymous with violence and betrayal. He was a flamboyant, ruthless figure who, by his own account, committed or ordered at least 14 murders. He killed his best friend and his business partners without a second thought. Facing a life sentence or possibly the death penalty, Martinez made a deal. He testified against his own organization, and after serving a fraction of his potential sentence, he too vanished into Witsec, given a new identity and a fresh start. And we mustn't forget Abraham Abe Rodriguez. His story is perhaps even more jarring. As a leader of a violent Chicago drug gang, Rodriguez was a suspect in dozens of shootings and at least 2 murders. He was a predator who terrorized neighborhoods, but he had information. He knew the inner workings of a network that stretched across the country. So, the government made a pact with him. In exchange for his cooperation, the murder charges vanished. He was never prosecuted for taking a human life. Instead, he was given protection, a new name, and the freedom to walk away from his bloody past as if it never happened. These are not isolated incidents. They are marquee examples of the program's most profound dilemma. Sammy the Bull, a man who confessed to 19 murders, was rewarded with his liberty. Alpo Martinez, a king of cocaine and death, was handed a new life. Abraham Rodriguez, a gang leader, had his murder charges wiped clean. These men were not just witnesses, they were infamous criminals in their own right. Their freedom was the price paid to convict others. But looking at the sheer brutality of their own confessed crimes, one must ask, was the price too high? Was justice truly served, or was it simply traded away? Starting over isn't cheap, especially when the government is footing the bill. When a witness like Sammy the Bull or Alpo Martinez enters the program, their old life is incinerated, and a new one must be built from scratch. This process is meticulous, and it is costly. The U.S. Marshals Service, which runs Witsec, becomes a combination of travel agent, real estate broker, and life coach for some of the nation's most notorious criminals. The first expense is relocation. Witnesses and their families are moved to a new, undisclosed location, often thousands of miles away from their old haunts, a place where no one knows their name or their dark history. Once relocated, the financial support begins. These new lives don't just magically appear. The government provides housing, sometimes for months, until the witness can get on their feet. There are living expenses to cover: food, utilities, clothing. For a period, the program provides a monthly stipend, a salary for being a witness. According to government reports, this can amount to as much as $60,000 a year, though it varies by case. This is taxpayer money, your money, being paid directly to confessed murderers and drug traffickers so they can start fresh. They may even receive assistance in finding a job or starting a new business. The benefits extend beyond simple cash and housing. The most valuable asset provided is a new identity. This is a complex and expensive undertaking. The Marshals Service works with other federal and state agencies to create a complete set of legitimate documentation. New birth certificates, new driver's licenses, new social security cards. It's a bureaucratic rebirth. For witnesses with families, the process is multiplied. Spouses and children also receive new identities, their lives forever altered by a deal made by their father or husband. The cost of this intricate paperwork, this official erasure and recreation of a person, adds significantly to the overall expense. And so, men who once made their living through extortion and violence find themselves on a federal payroll. Sammy the Bull, after his release, even started a swimming pool installation business in Arizona under his new name. The government provided the seed money for a new, legitimate life. The irony is staggering. The same system that prosecutes citizens for tax evasion is simultaneously funding the retirements of mob killers. The justification is always the same. It's a small price to pay for their testimony. But when you add up the costs, the housing, the stipends, the new identities, the security, for thousands of witnesses over decades, that small price becomes a monumental, ongoing expense. The promise of Witsec is one of transformation. A criminal renounces his old ways, helps the government, and in return is given the chance to become a law-abiding citizen. It's a nice idea, a clean break. But can a wolf truly change its nature simply by moving to a new forest? The case of Sammy the Bull Gravano suggests a chilling answer: no. After leaving prison and entering the program, Gravano settled in Arizona. He had a new name, a new face thanks to plastic surgery, and a new business. He was, for all intents and purposes, a model of the program's success. He even co-wrote a book about his life and appeared on national television, his face shadowed, to tell his story. But the quiet life, it seems, was not for him. The thrill of the criminal underworld, the easy money, the power, it was a siren song he could not resist. By the late 1990s, the man the government had spent a fortune to protect and rehabilitate was back in business. He wasn't fixing pools anymore. Sammy the Bull, the former Mafia underboss, had become an ecstasy kingpin. He built and ran a massive drug ring that spread the party drug throughout Arizona and beyond, a multi-million-dollar enterprise that involved his own family, including his wife and children. The rehabilitated witness had become a drug lord. In February 2000, the charade came to an end. Sammy Gravano was arrested, along with nearly 36 members of his new crew. The man who had confessed to 19 murders and been rewarded with freedom was now caught peddling drugs to a new generation. The irony was lost on no one. The government's star witness, the man whose testimony had been hailed as a triumph of justice, had used his second chance to create a new criminal empire. He had made a mockery of the very system that had saved him. This time, there would be no lenient deal. He was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Gravano's spectacular failure casts a long, dark shadow over the entire witness protection program. It raises the most fundamental question: does it actually work? If you take a career criminal, a man who has lived his entire adult life by a code of violence and profit, can you truly expect him to become a 9-to-5 working stiff? Or are you simply relocating a public safety threat? Alpo Martinez, another infamous graduate of the program, was eventually released and in 2021 was shot and killed in his old Harlem neighborhood, suggesting he too may have been drawn back to the life. These cases force us to confront the reality that old habits don't just die hard, sometimes they don't die at all. When a man like Sammy the Bull walks free after admitting to 19 murders, the very definition of justice comes into question. Is justice simply about securing a conviction? Is it a mathematical equation where imprisoning 20 criminals is worth the freedom of one, regardless of his own guilt? Or is justice something more profound? Is it about accountability, about paying a debt to society for the lives you have broken and the harm you have caused? For the families of the 19 people Gravano killed, his freedom was not justice. It was an insult. It was a declaration that their loved one's life was worth less than the government's need for a conviction against John Gotti. The scales of justice are meant to be blind, to weigh the facts impartially. But in these cases, the scales seem deliberately tilted. The government places a thumb on one side, adding immense weight to the value of the testimony. The crimes of the witness, no matter how heinous, are placed on the other side and are made to seem lighter in comparison. A murder charge for Abraham Rodriguez is simply wiped away. 14 murders committed by Alpo Martinez are reduced to a modest prison sentence. This is not blind justice. This is a calculated trade-off, where the moral clarity of right and wrong is sacrificed for the strategic goal of a prosecution. This raises a deeply uncomfortable question for the public. Who is the justice system truly serving in these arrangements? Is it serving the community by removing a larger criminal network from the streets, or is it serving its own institutional need for high-profile convictions? The public is told to accept this bitter pill, to understand that these are the tough choices that have to be made in the messy reality of fighting crime. But it is difficult to see a man who has taken a life, or many lives, living comfortably in a new town, with a new identity, and call that a victory for society. It feels more like a defeat. Ultimately, the freedom of these infamous witnesses sends a disturbing message. It suggests that if your crimes are big enough and if you have information that is valuable enough, you can negotiate your way out of accountability. It creates a perverse incentive structure where the most deeply embedded, and therefore most violent, criminals have the best bargaining chips. The small-time crook goes to jail, but the serial murderer with inside knowledge gets a deal. That is not a system of justice we can or should be comfortable with. It's a system of expediency, and the cost is our own sense of fairness and moral order. At the heart of this debate lies a profound ethical dilemma, a question that pushes our moral compass to its breaking point. Should a person who has committed the ultimate crime, the act of murder, ever be rewarded with freedom? The concept of a second chance is a powerful one, deeply woven into the fabric of our culture. We believe in redemption, in the capacity for change. But does that belief have limits? Surely the deliberate, cold-blooded taking of a human life must be a line that, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. It is an act that demands the most severe and permanent consequences our society can impose. When the government offers a deal to a murderer, it places a value on their testimony that is higher than the value of the life, or lives, they took. It is a grim transaction. The state essentially says, the information you possess is so important to us that we are willing to overlook the fact that you are a killer. This fundamentally devalues the victim. It tells their grieving families and the community at large that their loss, their pain, is a subordinate clause in a larger legal strategy. The moral authority of the justice system is built on the promise that it will speak for those who can no longer speak for themselves. This bargain feels like a betrayal of that sacred promise. Consider the perspective of a law-abiding citizen. You work hard, you pay your taxes, you follow the rules. Part of that social contract is the understanding that if someone commits a horrific act of violence, the system will hold them accountable. Witsec, when applied to violent criminals, shatters that contract. It creates a two-tiered system of justice. One for the ordinary person and another, more lenient one for the well-connected criminal who has something to sell. This erodes public trust and fosters a deep-seated cynicism about the fairness and integrity of our legal institutions. How can we trust a system that coddles killers? The argument for pragmatism, that it's a necessary evil, begins to crumble under the weight of this moral cost. While dismantling a crime family is a worthy goal, achieving it by compromising our most basic ethical principles is a Pyrrhic victory. It suggests that the ends justify the means, a dangerous philosophy for a society built on the rule of law. By making these deals, we are not just catching criminals, we are also changing ourselves. We are becoming a society that is willing to trade away its moral compass for a conviction, and in the long run, that is a price far too high to pay. Perfect. In the final analysis, we must weigh the costs and the benefits of this program in its current form. The scales are heavy with risk, expense, and moral ambiguity. The financial cost is significant, with millions of taxpayer dollars spent each year to relocate, house, and support individuals who have spent their lives preying on society. This is money that could be spent on schools, on healthcare, on supporting the victims of crime, rather than its perpetrators. We are funding the retirements of men who should be spending their lives in a prison cell, and we are asked to call it a good investment. Beyond the financial toll, there is the undeniable risk to public safety. As the case of Sammy Gravano so vividly demonstrated, relocating a predator does not necessarily reform him. It can simply move the threat from one community to another. We are placing ticking time bombs in quiet neighborhoods, hiding their violent pasts from the new people they live amongst, and hoping for the best. When a witness like Gravano or Alpo Martinez returns to a life of crime, the program is not just a failure, it becomes an accessory, an enabler of future harm. The government, in its effort to solve old crimes, inadvertently facilitates new ones. The purported benefits, the convictions of other dangerous criminals, must be examined with a critical eye. While taking a mob boss or a drug lord off the streets is a positive outcome, is it the only way? Are these deals with the devil truly indispensable? Or are they a shortcut, a convenient path that bypasses the harder, more patient work of traditional investigation? By relying so heavily on the testimony of co-conspirators, we may be neglecting other methods of building cases, methods that do not require us to compromise our principles and reward the guilty with freedom. The current application of Witsec to serial murderers and violent criminals is a dangerous and morally corrosive practice. It subverts justice, endangers the public, and betrays the trust of law-abiding citizens. The price of their testimony is simply too high. It is time to redraw the line. Protection for the truly peripheral witness, the innocent bystander, is one thing. But offering freedom and a fresh start to men who have built careers on violence and death is a bargain we can no longer afford to make. Justice should not be for sale, and a second chance should not be the reward for murder.